Good morning. Today is the 26th of April. Is it? No, it is. 26th. Yesterday was Anzac Day. And I observed Anzac Day by taking a moment of silence in the evening. Anzac is the Australia-New Zealand Armed Forces Memorial Day on the 25th to immortalize the sacrifice of soldiers from World War I, and I think we tied in World War II as well, until it sort of became almost a memorial day for Australia and New Zealand. I will say that my moment of silence was not intentional. I only just remembered that it was the 25th yesterday. So I'm going to be honest and say that I didn't take my moment of silence in observance of the holiday. But when I was in the military, that's what we would do, is go to the parade monuments or the monuments and do parades for the dawn services to to remember the sacrifice. But Anzac Day was always the leading up to my birthday. So with this being birthday week, I'm just going to probably keep the videos to things that I want to talk about. As far as video games quitting and marijuana quitting is concerned, I've had very little issues. We had a conversation yesterday about how to freeze marijuana edibles. I bought my wife so that she had something to help her get to sleep. She has edibles for that purpose, although she hasn't used them for almost as long as I haven't, because she found that regular use was giving her tinnitus. She was actually getting like a worse ringing in the ears when she would take them a couple of times a week. Normally she would take them on we'd take them, I'd be high, and then she would take one on date night, and then we'd both be high and have some fun together, but we haven't been doing that recently, and so yeah. But she wanted to know how to preserve them, because we'd spent, there's probably $80 worth of edibles sitting in there, so we chucked them all in. I got my notice for my renewal from the doctor, and it's funny because when I wrote the book, I've written and read the same section quite a few times about how the pot doctor process is just a pay-to-play. It's a tax for stoners, basically, and it's $200 for the referral. His 15 minutes on the phone with you costs you $200, and then you pay another $50 to get the license fee, not to him, to the state. So for 1 year of licensing, you pay $250 to be licensed to buy medicinal marijuana in the state of Ohio. And let me be clear. Medicinal marijuana in Ohio sucks. It's not potent, it's not strong, it's weak, it's a watered down version of marijuana because the state refuses to allow strains of over certain percentages. And because they've restricted the growers, a lot of the time you can't even get the strains that you want. If you find a good strain the week before, and then you go ahead and try to get that strain the next week, it may have been sold out and you may not see it again for a few months. The medicinal marijuana system in our state is a fucking joke. They would do better and get less ire, and I would be less sarcastic about it, if they just opened it up and said we're going fully legal and we don't care about the limits, like Denver did, like California did. I'm not going to be one of those people that stands in the way of legalization, because I think ultimately we need to educate people about its use in the same way that we've educated people about the use of alcohol and why being an alcoholic's bad. Same should go for pot. But unfortunately, the media around marijuana typically tends to be mostly positive. And so people have this weird view of it. But the medicinal program in Ohio is a joke. It's a complete joke. You pay $200 to get a license to buy stuff that they wouldn't shit out at Denver or California or Seattle or wherever. In fact, when I traveled, when I would go to those places, I would buy the products from their dispensaries and be blown away with the strength of what it was that I was getting. And then I would come home, and the stuff that I was getting from here wouldn't be enough. It was always too short. So, yeah. So on the one hand, you have doctors who are raking it in, charging people $200 for a 15-minute conversation where they don't really give a shit about what they're dealing with. This isn't any real doctor care. This is just a guy who wants to make his $200 and keep the call as short as possible. And a state that's taking a licensing fee, all for the purpose of supplying shit quality weed for people who 90% of them don't need it for any medicinal reason. I am absolutely of the opinion that the vast majority of conditions that people say marijuana treats are not. There's no scientific evidence backing those claims up. And that more than anything, what we're talking about here is that marijuana makes life a little bit less sucky to live if you're dealing with a long-term condition. Like they talk about it being useful for Crohn's, which is what I was getting it for when I was using. And yet, most of the time, it actually made the symptoms of Crohn's worse for me. The pain and the poor gastric motility and the bloating. Like I was worse when I was using. So, yeah. So, how does that work? And now that condition is on the list, that condition is never going to be taken off the list. Even if you go to them and say, look, this isn't helping people with Crohn's. All it's doing is it's giving people a little bit of relief, a little bit of distraction from the suckiness of it. And that in actual fact, with Crohn's, it tends to be better to control it with diet and lifestyle. And if you have access, maybe biologics or that sort of thing. God damn. Excuse me. Anyway. So I got that reminder email and I trashed it right away because I was just like, well, I'm not going back to get my license again. The whole medicinal marijuana system to me seems like a waste. And it's funny because there are states where you have medicinal marijuana side by side with recreational marijuana, and I wonder to myself, what is the difference at this point? Other than the fact that medicinal marijuana customers, it comes on a prescription, and they get in line faster, they get through the line faster because they don't have to wait behind all the chumps that are going in for recreational. The products are all the same. And your health insurance isn't paying for it. They don't give a shit. The health insurance isn't paying for medicinal marijuana. Family doctors are usually not pot doctors, and a lot of them are opposed. Because I read an article where, I guess this is what I'll finish on. I read an article that was written by a doctor who was talking about how prescribing marijuana for illnesses as part of treatment is dangerous because we are still only now really learning the negative effects of marijuana on the mental aspects, on the mental health of the people who take it, and particularly people who are chronic users who use marijuana 3 or 4 times a day, every day, how it affects their mental health in their motivation and their ability to interact with the world. And the point that he makes is we have a lot more evidence that marijuana is damaging to the mental health of people who use it chronically than we have evidence that it helps with the physical ailments or the mental ailments of a lot of these diseases that it's being prescribed for. And I think for me that was one of the more telling things about it, was that, you know, the FDA's only approved marijuana use for two things: AIDS and cancer, and only for people who are essentially who can't keep weight on. It's being used to help them with aiding them in keeping weight on, or being able to eat enough so that they can stay somewhat healthy through chemo or with AIDS with the wasting syndrome. That's it. It hasn't been approved for anything else. And if you think that they're not trying to find ways to make it approved, I guarantee you that's wrong, because for them, what they're witnessing, if you're the FDA, what you're witnessing is an explosion of use of a drug that we still don't really fully understand. And it's going to have long-term ramifications on this country, particularly with the young people who start when they're teenagers. I think you're going to see that the notion of, and again, not to get too political here, but the idea of communism, where the government takes care of everything, suddenly becomes very attractive to losers. And marijuana is a great drug at making losers. Taking away your motivation, putting you on your ass, making you want to look to do things that are fun rather than the things that are productive or important. Thank God that there are still young people out there who can see through the charade. But yeah, medicinal marijuana is a scam. They might as well just make it fully legal and be done with it. Call it what it is and let them deal marijuana like they are, without having to go through all the horse shit of licensing and prescriptions and all this other nonsense. Anyway, that's it for me. Ka kite.